Hi, everyone. Good day. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Diana, for that introduction. I'm not a national hero. You have to play soccer and do it well to be a national hero. But it's really a pleasure to be here. As Diana was saying, MercadoLibre basically started in Stanford almost exactly 11 years ago. It was in March, and I was attending a finance class taught by Jack McDonald, who's still teaching. I had used my silver bullet. I don't know if you still have silver bullets or not, but I had used my silver bullet to attend his classes. And he had one day. It was before Google and Google Images. So I always came to class and sat in the first row. I didn't study that much while at Stanford, but I really enjoyed coming to class and to lectures and meeting the people that came to present. And one day I came in early, and a guy was sitting there, and I didn't recognize him. And he said, "Hello, I'm Joe Doe. I'm just dressed up like Warren Buffett today." I obviously didn't understand the joke, so I said, "Ha ha ha." And I sat alone in a class with Warren Buffett for 5 minutes. I didn't say a word to him, and the guy actually was Warren Buffett. So after that, I decided that I had to use Jack McDonald's contacts, and I was preparing my business plan for MercadoLibre, which was an idea that I had, basically having lunch and dinners with friends here at school, and I asked him to introduce me to someone he thought might be interested in investing in a project like mine, and he said, he never says who's coming to class, partly to make sure that everybody attends to every class. He said, don't say this to anyone, but John Muse, who's one of the founders of Hicks Muse, will be coming to class in a month, and I will tell him about your project during lunch, and I will set it up so that you can drive him to the airport after the class. So he did, and during the trip, actually before the trip, 2 of my classmates stepped into the car. They already had like 10 job offers. I didn't have anyone because I wasn't looking for a job. I knew what I wanted to do. But they were the type of friends that they like to be near well-known people, etc. And they monopolized the conversation during the trip. And I was getting really nervous. We were going down 101, and he had a private plane, so it wasn't a problem if he was there late. And so kind of halfway through the trip, he asked me, "So what are you going to do after you graduate?" And then I started with my pitch, which I had rehearsed like 100 times, but I knew I wouldn't have the time to deliver all of it. So I had to take the wrong exit and took him to the commercial airport first, and pretending that I didn't know he had a private plane. This was also before 9/11. So after that, we went to the private airport, and in those days you went with the car to the plane, and he stepped off the car, which was parked right next to the plane, and took his luggage and walked up into the plane, and I was standing there with my 2 friends, and he left the luggage and he walked all the way down, and he told me next to my ear, "Your story is fantastic, and I'm fascinated by it, and I want to invest." And obviously, my 2 friends didn't quite hear what happened, and they were extremely anxious. But I was still so angry at them that I refused to tell them. And I had already bought tickets to go to Europe with my girlfriend after graduation. So I got home. I told my girlfriend, "I'm sorry, but the trip has been canceled." And we ended up going to Europe 6 years later. But that's how MercadoLibre started, and it's a true story, and it happened here in March of 1999. So with that, the idea today is to give you a brief overview of MercadoLibre and make this very interactive, so feel free to interrupt with questions as we go along. And afterwards, if you don't, the presentation will be over in less than probably 20-25 minutes maximum, and then we will anyhow have a time for Q&A. So the origins of MercadoLibre, as I mentioned, they started in June of 1999. This trip was in March of 1999. We started the company in June, and we launched in August as an online auction services in Argentina, but we quickly expanded regionally. We then did 2 rounds of financing. We did a first round of financing in October of 99, where Hicks Muse invested. It was around for $7.6 million, and they were joined with Chase Capital at the time. And then we did a second round of financing in May of 2000 for $46.5 million, which was led by Goldman Sachs. And obviously the first round investors also participated, and we had a few other investors like GE Capital. So during 1999 and 2000, basically we expanded regionally, hired a great team, many classmates from Stanford leading each one of our different subsidiaries. In 2001, we partnered with eBay. They had acquired a European company that had a subsidiary in Brazil that was a competitor of ours. And in exchange for almost 20% of MercadoLibre, they gave us that subsidiary, and we signed a 5-year strategic partnership and non-competition agreement. In 2002, we bought a Brazilian competitor called Locao, which was a strong local competitor in Brazil. In 2003, 4 years after launch, we really started to see some growth in the business. Before that, it was all financing and marketing and focusing on product, but not really that much traction in the business. So that's a big change from what you see today. Companies like Groupon that went from nothing to rumors say $3 billion in revenues this year in 2-3 years. Obviously, it's a much bigger internet, and many of the bottlenecks that existed 11 years ago have been solved, like payments, for example. In 2004, we launched our payments platform, and we launched a specific business model for classifieds. In 2005, we broke even, and we acquired the Remate, which was a regional competitor that was launched right when we launched by a group of Harvard MBAs. So that was a huge battle. That's also something that I always enjoy telling to Stanford grads, specifically when they ask me to call admits that have been admitted to both schools. I tell them the story. It works quite well. But it's a fascinating story because they were all Harvard MBAs and we were all Stanford MBAs, and we were competing in all of Latin America. And we built a great company, and they got acquired by us in 2005. For $12 million, we bought half of the operation, and then in 2008, we bought the other half for $50 million. And today, MercadoLibre is valued almost at $3 billion, so Stanford is better than Harvard. In 2007, we IPO'd. We did a $333 million IPO, which was a huge event because there weren't any tech IPOs those days, and the day that we priced was the first time since 9/11 that the European Central Bank, the Fed, and the Japanese Central Bank together had to intervene to provide liquidity to the markets, because it was when the subprime crisis was already at full speed, and there was a huge financial mess, which lasted obviously for several more months. But we were quite unlucky. However, the IPO was very successful. Unfortunately, we priced at 18 that day, and the stock closed at 28. So we left a lot of money on the table there. And then it's been going up since then. In 2008, we also acquired a classifieds player called Tucarro that is very strong in Venezuela and Colombia. And more recently, in 2009, we launched 2 new businesses called Mercado Clicks and Mercado Shops. As you can see, we're very original with our names. Let me talk briefly about Latin America. It's a very interesting region, the one that we operate in. It has a very good combination of actual GDP, population size, and expected growth. We have almost 600 million people in the region, with a GDP per capita of close to $9,000 and a total GDP of close to $5 trillion. In terms of internet, we're seeing very strong growth, but importantly, we believe we will continue to see very strong growth going forward, because in relative terms, the internet penetration and the broadband penetration is still quite low in the region. Oops. Sorry. Which is the pointer? Yeah. As you can see, internet penetration is still quite low, and broadband penetration is still quite low, but it's growing very fast. So we believe during the next 10 years, we will continue to see very, very strong growth on our business and in our industry. So this is the projection for e-commerce growth. Obviously, in relative terms, Latin America is still quite small, but growing very fast relative to the other regions in the world. And we believe this is going to continue being the case. MercadoLibre basically covers all of the region, its most important and largest markets, and the objective is to cover all the region, as our focus is mainly Latin America. We are the largest e-commerce site in the region, and we are the largest e-commerce site in every one of the countries where we operate as well. We are the 11th largest retail site in the world. So this is according to Comscore. The largest is eBay, second Amazon in terms of unique visitors. Very close to eBay is Amazon, then Apple, Alibaba, that's a Chinese site, and we are the 11th largest in the world. In Latin America, we're the first. We're 3 times larger than the second. And similarly in Brazil, we are the first e-commerce site. And this is the case in Brazil is our largest market, is the largest market in the region as well. And we are the leaders there, and we're the leaders in every single country where we operate as well. We're also one of the top internet destinations in the region. We're the 8th largest destination in terms of unique visitors. So Microsoft is first, Google, Facebook, and we're 8th. And in Brazil, we are the 9th. So we're also an important destination there. And we basically, the way we have implemented our business, we have 4 ecosystems. What we're trying to create is a very powerful ecosystem made up of 4 smaller ecosystems that feed each other. The largest business is our marketplace business, and I will review each one of these briefly. Then we have our payments business and our advertising and web store businesses. Our marketplace business is basically the eBay or Amazon type of marketplace. It's interesting because we started being an auction site of used stuff, and today 96% of what is sold on our platform is fixed price, and 75% is new stuff. So we have evolved the model quite a bit, much closer to the Amazon marketplace. Having said that, we're also very strong in C2C. We've combined the Amazon marketplace with Craigslist. We're very, very strong in C2C as well. The 25% that is not new is used stuff sold by individuals, where we are also leaders there. And that's a very attractive business to be in, the C2C business. We will see the evolution of the figures, so let me show you. We started, this is prior to 2002, we were embarrassed to show the metrics, but you can see very strong growth since last year. We recently announced our yearly results. Last year we had 39 million transactions. That's a compounding annual growth rate of 52% during the 8 years. I think this is close to 20 times what we were in 2002. Last year we had 15 million buyers and sellers actively using our marketplace, and that's a figure that to me is very important. We had 4 million people selling on our platform, and we had 52,000 people that make a living selling on our platform. So that's something that, for me, I'm very proud of. Typically, when I go to one of our subsidiaries, I go and visit several of our sellers, and recently I've been very surprised by the size and the professionalism that these sellers have. Recently I was in Brazil with a seller that has 160 employees, and they solely sell on our platform. So we are already enabling very large businesses. You have a question?
For the bottom line for paid listings, just curious what that is and what you did in 2009 and 10.
We improved so the question is, why is there such a big jump in paid listings in the last year?
So what is a paid listing?
We have paid listings and we have free listings because more recently we introduced the ability for sellers to list something completely for free without any sort of fees. And it has been a great move. It was risky at first because we didn't know how much it would cannibalize our own business. And it turned out that obviously we grew listings a lot, but we also grew revenues a lot, because what we're doing is we are convincing sellers to list for free initially to try the platform, but then to upgrade to paid listings. So it has worked very well. And we also improved our product quite a bit in 2009 and 2010, and that enabled listing on our platform much easier than what we used to do in the past. In terms of gross merchandise volume, which is the value of the stuff sold on our platform, we grew from 55 million in 2002 to 3.4 billion last year. This is like 60x or 67% compounded annual growth rate. So those are some metrics that are interesting. Obviously, the business continues to grow very fast, and as I was saying before, we believe because of the characteristics of our industry, we'll continue to grow very fast for many years. And that's one of the reasons why we introduced free listings, because there are millions of new users coming onto the internet in Latin America these years, which is not what you find, for example, in more mature markets like the States, where everyone has already been using the internet for a while. In Latin America, you have millions of people that are accessing the internet for the first time. So we didn't want to have any barrier between these people and our platform. So we are happy to have them list for free. And then the free listings have less traffic. So then if we see that those listings don't convert, we email them and tell them, hey, why don't you try upgrading to a listing that has more visibility. Our second business model, our second ecosystem, is our payments platform that operates very much like PayPal. It used to be a closed platform that only was useful inside MercadoLibre, and it had an escrow component, and the buyers had to pay for the service because of the escrow service. We've transformed that in our largest markets, Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina, to a PayPal type of model where it's free for the buyers to use, and it's growing very, very rapidly, both inside our platform and outside of our platform. In the past, with the old version that we still have in our smaller markets, you cannot use our payment system outside of our platform. So we believe this is going to be a business that has the potential to be bigger, and we believe this business will be bigger than MercadoLibre, and we're seeing very, very rapid growth there. It's a very competitive business as well. We have local competitors and regional competitors here. These are some metrics for Mercado Pago. You can see a very big jump in the number of transactions processed and the total payment volume in the last 2 years as we transformed our business model and we improved our product. There's also a big jump in the adoption with the percentage of listings within MercadoLibre that offer Mercado Pago. A big change that we did is we used to be like PayPal, that's optional for the sellers to accept PayPal or not. Now in the countries where we have our new platform, it's compulsory to use Mercado Pago, and it doesn't have a cost for the seller. The cost is embedded in the MercadoLibre fee, but every seller has to offer Mercado Pago because we believe it's a much better experience for the buyer. And our objective is to have 100% of the transactions. We're at 20% currently, or this was the average for 2010. Q4 was like closer to 30%. Yes.
How did you test that when you decided to make that change to make sure that like you weren't going to have a huge drop off in some people who are listing?
It's hard to test some of these things. What we typically do is we try it in a market and we see what happens. Before we try it, we obviously look a lot at what's going on around the world. And if you look at the most successful marketplaces, which in my opinion is iTunes and the Amazon Marketplace, and more recently the Android Marketplace, in those marketplaces, when you buy, you pay. There isn't a difference between buying and paying. And in the eBay Marketplace and in our marketplace still today, there is a difference between buying and paying. You buy and then you figure out with the seller how you wish to pay. And that creates a lot of friction, a lot of hassle. It creates a very high customer service costs for the seller and for us. So it was quite obvious to us that this is the way to go. And we're going there, but it creates a lot of noise. When you have a big platform, 4 million people selling on it, and you create a big change like this, it creates a lot of noise. And you have to be able to maintain your decision despite the noise. eBay had a lot of those problems some years ago when they started to do some changes. I think Facebook is great at that. They make their minds about something and they do it, and everybody complains and they say, we believe this is going to be. If they realize it's a mistake, then they go back. But when you have an ecosystem with millions of participants, you always hear lots of noise, and you have to be careful to separate the noise between what is actually long-term best for all the participants. Okay. So this is our payments platform. And very briefly, Mercado Clicks and Mercado Shops, which are our two latest launches. Mercado Clicks is basically an AdWords type of service where in the past it was almost heresy to let people go outside of our platform. So we wouldn't want anybody that was in MercadoLibre to leave our site. And with the model, we were very successful at attracting small and medium-sized sellers to our platform, but we were never really successful at attracting and retaining large retailers and large brands to our platform because they didn't want to list on our platform next to all these small and medium-sized businesses that competed with them, and they also wanted to control the overall buying experience. But through Mercado Clicks, we have been able to build very good relationships with very large retailers that are happy to be on our platform. And we also believe we are offering a better buying experience to the buyers that are now able to see in one place the small and medium-sized sellers and the ability also to click away from there and buy in the large retailer if they want to. Sometimes they prefer to buy in large retailers because of price, guarantees, brand recognition, or special offers that they might have. So it has worked very well for us. We're obviously smaller than Google in the region, but we're growing very rapidly, and we have over 11,000 advertisers already. So this is a business that we believe has a huge potential as well. And finally, we launched Mercado Shops, which is a web store solution, and it's also growing extremely rapidly. We launched it in the second half of 2010, and we have already over 5,000 web stores active. And this is basically the ability for anyone to do e-commerce online, and it comes integrated with Mercado Pago and with MercadoLibre and with Mercado Click. So it's very easy to generate traffic to that store. If you have some inventory that you want to sell in MercadoLibre because you're not selling it on your platform, it's very easy to transfer that inventory to MercadoLibre and sell it there, and vice versa. And again, it's a vision of having this full ecosystem where each one of the parts helps the other. And finally, some financials for MercadoLibre. In 2005, here we didn't dare go beyond 2005. So imagine what our revenues were our first 5 years of operations, not very substantial. But last year we had almost $220 million of revenues and $56 million of net income. And recently, in our last earnings call, we announced our first dividend, quarterly dividend, and the policy is to pay out 25% of the prior year's net income to the shareholders. So it's a great feeling 11 years later to be able to give back to our shareholders some of the money that they have invested. So that concludes the presentation, and we can now open it up to questions. Yeah.
You created the company. What were the major tweaks that you created as compared to the eBay models?
Well, we covered several of those, but for the first few years, we really tried to recreate eBay. But then we saw that several things didn't work. First of all, people preferred fixed prices to auctions, so we moved to auctions very rapidly. We've been at 90% plus fixed prices for the last 8-9 years, and eBay is still at 60% roughly fixed prices, going up because they were 3 years ago they were like at 40%. So I would say fixed prices is a big one. The recent change that we have done with the payments, making Mercado Pago compulsory to all the sellers, and we're moving forward to making it the usage compulsory also to buyers, I think is going to be a big difference. The way we approached classifieds, we quickly realized that people were not buying cars in auctions, even though they might or they were doing it in the US. We didn't think that was the right model, so we very rapidly did a completely different business model for classifieds with different pricing, different navigation, different search, and it worked very well. We are the leaders in motors in every country, and that's not the case for eBay in Latin America. Sorry, in the US. There are very strong vehicle sites here in the US. And then, so I think those probably are the biggest tweaks. And sorry, finally, the free listings and the way we have been able to remain very strong, and I would say leaders in classifieds. Here you have a Craigslist, which is very, very big and very strong. You don't have anything nowhere near to Craigslist in Latin America, even though free classifieds have existed there for many years. And I believe the reason is that we captured the C2C segment better than what eBay did here. And more recently, allowing free classifieds, free listings has been a good part of that.
Meg Whitman was actually here on Tuesday, and she called the decision to join the venture with you as opposed to trying to go into the market one of her best decisions as CEO of eBay. I was wondering, from your perspective, what were the pros and cons of receiving a significant investment from eBay and having them as a fairly significant shareholder?
Yeah, I was with Meg last night, and she told me she was here a few days ago. So it was, for us, it was a very big win to partner with eBay. When we signed the deal, we knew it was going to be good. We weren't sure why, but we were willing to do it almost at any price. And we were lucky that eBay didn't want to consolidate our losses into their P&L, so they wanted to be under 20% of ownership. And we were willing to do it, I don't know, not at any price, but we really wanted to do the deal. We didn't know exactly why. When we did it, we signed a best practice sharing agreement and a non-compete agreement. And the best practice sharing, which we didn't value that much at the time, ended up being extremely valuable, because coming to the quarterly meetings at eBay and sharing knowledge with them, learning from the things they were doing right and the things they were doing wrong, was incredibly advantageous for us. And I think it was also very helpful for them, because they saw in us, we didn't need their approval to do anything, so we would go and do things radically different to them, and they would learn from that as well. So I think it was mutually convenient. Obviously, the cons is I would have preferred not to get diluted 20%, but there's a price to everything.
Are there any problems with the partnership, especially like that you're launching PayPal in Latin America now, when you get that Mercado Pago, which is like PayPal?
No, obviously the partnership has evolved a lot. I mean, when we signed it, we were almost like a subsidiary of eBay, and the non-competing competition agreement expired 5 years ago. It lasted for 5 years, from 2001 to 2006, and now we compete. We compete with their classifieds. We compete with PayPal. We have a very good relationship with them. They are our largest minority shareholder, but they don't have a board seat, and we have a very good relationship, but we are also competitors, which is not unusual in our industry also. I mean, we are partners with Google. We're also competitors with Google and Facebook and et cetera, so.
You touched briefly on the tension between C2C and B2C. Can you talk some more on your strategy of how to keep the marketplace open for C2C as B2C grows?
Yeah, I don't see those two things as conflicting, even though intuitively they look very conflicting. You say, I have this used mouse to sell. How will anybody see that mouse if there are 5,000 mouses being sold by Best Buy or other large retailers? But it's interesting, but it gets sold anyhow. If you have the right price, obviously C2C have the way for them to gain market share within our marketplace is to lower prices. But the way the internet works, people don't necessarily do a search and then go page by page until they find the inventory. They access inventory through natural search in Google, or I don't know, but they get to the inventory. I don't know how they do it, but they get to the inventory, and the 75-25% mix has been relatively stable across the different countries. So there is good liquidity in the C2C marketplace as well, even though free listings are the ones that you see last as a buyer when you do a search. Yes.
I understood that the model is shifting a little bit towards the Amazon business model. And if that is true, how are you planning? I mean, are you planning to build warehouses to work more in the logistic aspects of the business, or going to keep more in the eBay?
That's a great question. We are not into logistics today, and we don't have plans to get into logistics ourselves yet, but that's something that we are looking at closely, and we'll see what we need to do as the market evolves. But currently what we're going to be doing is partnering with the people that do logistics in the region and having them do logistics for us. But we plan to get involved much more significantly in the shipping process than what we are today. Today, we're letting the seller solve shipping, and each seller might have a different solution. There's an opportunity there to get in the middle and negotiate better prices on behalf of all of our sellers, and whenever there's a problem, have ourselves interacting with the logistics provider rather than the different sellers. So there's an opportunity to improve what we're doing, and that's what we're going to be working on in the next 2 years. Basically, with e-commerce, there are two very large friction points. One is payments, and the other one is shipping. We believe payments, we're very close to solving it with these things that I was telling you that we're doing with Mercado Pago. And shipping is the next big thing for us to solve. And we intend to solve it using a similar approach to the one we have been using with payments. Yes.
Do you believe the Amazon model is feasible in Latin America? Basically because sometimes infrastructure, especially postal services, tend not to be as solid. And if you were to apply it, would you only partner with people who are already doing logistics? Or what would you see the tweaks? I see that MercadoLibre is tweaking every model and bringing it to Latin America. What would be the necessary tweaks to make it work?
Well, logistics in Latin America has many issues, particularly unions. So we are happy not to do logistics, and I think it's going to be difficult to get into logistics in Latin America when you add the unions factor. Logistics unions are very powerful in some of the countries. So we initially are not intending to do it ourselves. Whether or not it's feasible, I don't know. It's a question for someone like Amazon to solve. Yeah.
Many of us are thinking of starting our own internet companies after graduation. What are some of the common mistakes that you think we've made in our first year of being in business?
Well, I can tell you the ones we made. We thought we were going to grow much faster than what we did. Probably it was a consequence of the days when we launched. As I was saying before, today things have changed dramatically. You see companies like Groupon and Singa really scaling very, very, very fast because the internet is much bigger and because many of the bottlenecks like payments have been solved already for them. But we thought we were going to scale much faster. Something I would do if I were to start again is whenever you do a round of financing, secure more funding than what you think you might need in case you don't grow as fast or you need to spend more than what you thought. And then be very, very careful the way you spend the money. I think one of the things we did right relative to everyone else in the region is we really saved the money for the rainy days. And then when the bubble burst and nobody was able to access capital any longer, and the business yet wasn't there because the internet was, when we launched, internet penetration in the region was 3%. Today it's close to 40%. So e-commerce, which was 10% of that 3%, was really very small. So all our competitors ran out of cash, and we still had $40 million in the bank. So that was important. And I think the most important thing for technology startups is to focus on the product and get the product right. And if there's something that I regret is not having a stronger technology background. It's something that I think Stanford should provide the GSB. You graduate here knowing accounting, and you can interact with an auditor and discuss a P&L with them, but you cannot interact with a developer and discuss the way they have written code. And that's a big handicap for technology startups. So if you don't have that background, as I did, I think it's important to find a partner that has a very strong technology background, because that's the most important thing, the product.
Yes, one question I want to ask you is, when you decide to start your company, how did you go about the decision process of incorporating it here and staying in the Silicon Valley where things appear to be easier because of the mentorship you can get from entrepreneurs, the venture capital industry is here, as opposed to going back to Argentina right away, as we think through that decisions ourselves?
Well, it's the way you want to live your life. I mean, there's no right or wrong there. I just want, I was with my girlfriend. We wanted to go back to Argentina, and so that's why we decided to go back. But obviously, this is an amazing place to live and to do business in. It's obviously more competitive as well, much more competitive.
How have you overcame, or are you overcoming the barriers from Latin American consumers to trade online or to give personal information to an online platform? And maybe the second question, the flip side of that question, now that you are seeing tons of data from your consumers, what are you as a company doing to actually leverage and monetize all the data that you have?
So the barriers, it's time and it's a product. If you have a good product, people buy online and they don't see any barriers. Now with the new payments platform, you come. The second time you buy online, you do 3 clicks, and your credit card is stored there, your shipping address is stored there, and it's really easy. You see buyer protection, and people feel very safe doing it. And we have a very high repeat ratio of buyers that come and buy again. So having a good product is helpful, and then it's time. Some people need some time they hear from their friends, hey, I bought this on MercadoLibre. It's really easy. It's very simple, and it's a function of as internet penetration increases, those barriers come down. And with respect to the data, I think we could do a much better job using our data. We don't intend to monetize the data, selling it to third parties or anything like that. But one of the big things we're starting to look at is, doing the famous people who've seen this have also bought that, and people who bought this have also bought that. And we're just in the very early days of that, but we're starting to do that well. You need to catalog you structure all the data. And our data was unstructured, our marketplace data. So we've done a very big effort in building our own catalog of products, trying to structure that data so that we know that people that bought exactly this mouse also bought exactly this monitor and not just any other monitor. And once you have the catalog, then it's much easier to do those recommendations.
What do you think was that you did different from the remate that made a difference?
As I was saying before, I think we focused much more on product, less on PR and on marketing. They were very good at that. We were probably not good at that, so that's why we focused more on product. And we saved our money, so and they spent it all. I think overall we had a long-term vision of building a company, and that's probably what I would encourage anyone who's think of doing a startup to have, is really to have a long-term vision of building a company, because then you have many difficulties along the way, and if your motivation is just to do an IPO or have an exit or sell the company, it's not enough. Sometimes you need a lot of patience, like we needed, and we had a long-term vision of building a company that added value to millions of people. I think that was very powerful.
What do you see as your next big challenges?
Well, we have a huge challenge because the technology industry is incredibly competitive. So whatever you did right in the past is probably a weakness today, because you have lots of legacy, and we have lots of legacy. If you look at the players in the US, there are very few companies, internet companies that started in 1999 when we started, that are successful today. And that's because technology-wise, it's been hard for them to adapt. And we're in the process of adapting. We have rewritten all of our code to have an open platform with APIs and to enable third-party to develop on top of our platform. That's something that we didn't have. It's still not live today, and that's going to be a major change. So basically transforming our technology is a big challenge, and if we do that well, I think we have tremendous potential, because I believe the growth in the next years is going to be much faster than the growth in the last years.
So with Mercado Shops, you kind of gone away from your own site and your own destination site to more of a distributed model. What are your thoughts on that in the future? Is it going to consolidate more? Is it going to go more in the direction of, I guess, commerce everywhere out there? Or where's it going to go?
It's going to go in the latter, commerce everywhere. So if you look at it, Mercado Shops is that, but Mercado Clicks and Mercado Pago, the open Mercado Pago, is also that. So while MercadoLibre continues to grow very rapidly and is our largest business, we believe it's going to go towards the open model, and that's why we launched Mercado Shops, and Mercado Shops acts, if you will, as a distributor of our payments platform and our Mercado Clicks, our traffic generation platform, and also as MercadoLibre, because you can very easily transfer inventory from one to the other. So MercadoLibre is becoming more and more of an open platform as well. And with the APIs, etc., the vision is to have, let's say you list an item on our platform, it's like listing a video on YouTube, then that item can appear as a video on YouTube, that it can appear anywhere in any blog or you can see that item anywhere and buy it. So that's a vision that we have for MercadoLibre, and that's the part of transforming our technology that we're doing. Opening it up so that you can, rather than going to MercadoLibre to see this item or video, you can see it anywhere. You can embed that item anywhere and actually buy it anywhere, from a mobile phone, from a tablet, etc. Yes?
So you have a theoretical market of 600 million people, but I still see a lot of silos. So for example, you have Chile with 60 million people, and so I see the economies of scale, but the network economies as compared to eBay are not that strong, because you don't have intercommerce between, I suppose, in between, I don't know, Peru and Argentina. So what are you doing to raise those very physical barriers to allow commerce to flow?
Yeah, there's very little cross-border trade today. Payments is a big part of solving that, but it's highly regulated, and the people that are doing it are not public companies that need to comply with all the laws like we do. It's very, very complex to transfer money from Argentina to Peru or from Argentina to Chile without having many licenses in the region. So, and then obviously there's duties and customs. So that's not our focus. Our focus is the e-commerce that happens within each one of the countries, and we believe it's a huge market for that. Yes.
Right. I would let you know about how you started, actually. I mean, did you find a technical co-founder? As you said before, you need someone in your team who is technical. And did you develop a prototype or something like that to show?
Yeah. So my cousin has a technical background, and he started the company with me. And that's an interesting, fun story. We bought an auction software from a company that was called OpenSite. It was eventually bought by a larger player. I can't remember now by whom. They were in North Carolina, I believe. And yes, in North Carolina. And we bought it for $15,000. It was a terrible technology, but it enabled us to launch. We knew we were going to have lots of competition. And in the meantime, we had some developers doing our own platform. But initially we bought an off-the-shelf software which we installed in the servers, and we started with that.
You mentioned that one of your goals is to be present in all of Latin American countries, and I was wondering why you have not penetrated the few countries that we see in Central America and Bolivia.
Partly it's because the technology that we have, that we're changing, it's costly for us to do each country. Each new country is costly, so typically to add one feature in Brazil has a better payoff than launching in Bolivia. But that's the reason why we are completely overhauling our technology, so that we are able to launch in many more countries and move much more rapidly than what we have been doing in the past. Yep.
Sorry. I get the sense that you move really fast. There was some sense of urgency when you created the business. I want to know if you were here today as a student and you have an idea, you need to run as fast as you can, or you can wait for. I mean, it's case dependent, but.
If you're going to be in the technology industry, you need to run faster than what you can. That's why you need a great team, and yeah, basically it's very, very stressful, and it doesn't stop. It's always like that. So, yeah. I think you haven't asked me.
Yeah. You started in the States or in? Because my question is about international people without a work permit and everything. But this company you bought was here in the States, or? Yeah. So for you was everything, all the visa permits, all this problem, because all international people right now is like very complicated for us starting things here. So what do you feel about that? Do you have any advice about?
We bought a software.
Yeah.
We didn't work in the States. So we didn't have visa. That's something to mark last chance, but that was not easy to fix. We started to achieve.
If you see the last 10 years, most of the largest companies in Brazil, like in Latin America in general, are local versions of companies in the US, like MercadoLibre or Submarino in Brazil. How do you see in the next 10 years if it's a better investment opportunity to replicate proven business models here and there, or is to like invest in new business models that emerge from there?
I don't know. It's a hard question to answer, but what I would say is it's very hard to replicate a business model in the region because you cannot replicate it. You need to adapt it. It's always, there are many differences. And so, I don't know. Yeah, that's what I would say.
You were in our shoes today and you didn't have MercadoLibre to basically come with. What would you be excited about? Is there any business model that you would think that is working here, it may work in Latin America, or something
Yeah.
that wouldn't?
Well, there are many. Obviously, the group buying stuff is extremely hot, and it's working very well over there as well. Games on the internet. We do payments for some gaming companies in the region, and they are growing very, very fast. The biggest platform is Orkut in Brazil, but Facebook is growing very, very fast in the region and in Brazil. So those are, I see people doing very well in those spaces. And yeah.
A bit of a follow-up on the payment side. Your payment platform benefits from the fact they have MercadoLibre to back it up, and PayPal from eBay. But at the same time, especially in games with all the different currencies or Facebook credits, you're seeing a proliferation of different currencies, virtual currencies on the web, and probably would make sense to have some kind of payment platform that can consolidate those. What is your view in terms of like the ability of a payment platform without the benefit of a e-commerce platform behind like a MercadoLibre or eBay to win in the market?
It's tough. It's very tough to build it because you need to create scale, and it's very difficult to reach scale. So I think that it's easier for Google Checkout now with Android, for example, and Facebook with Facebook credits, but they don't use real money. They are just using Facebook credits, so in a way they are complementary. But it's tough.
But do you think there will be one winner in the payment space ultimately, or how do you think about the way that's going to play out?
I don't know. I don't know. I think there might be more than one, but probably the largest will have a substantial share of the value created, if you will. So probably there's going to be more than one. If you look at the credit cards industry, that's probably similar to what will happen online.
Within the technology sector, but maybe even beyond the technology sector, what are the entrepreneurial trends that you see in like the biggest markets in Latin America? And like what are they working on? And also, like, do you think like entrepreneurship has become easier or harder in terms of like, do you see more entrepreneurship, or like how? What is your opinion about that?
I see a lot more entrepreneurship in the region. Endeavor, this foundation that selected us in 1999, has been doing an amazing job in the region through universities and working with governments. And everyone is very aware of how valuable it is to have entrepreneurs in a country, because they generate mobile progress, mobility within a society, and innovation and jobs, and so there's a very big focus on entrepreneurship in all the countries, and I see many people doing stuff. So I think the environment is very good, and there's venture capitalists. Obviously, it's not Silicon Valley, but it's a big change from what it was 11 years ago. Yes.
Talk about 11 years ago. I remember seeing the first advertisement for MercadoLibre, and I don't think people even knew what online shopping was. And there was this advertisement, and there were really a lot of players. What was the strategy to differentiate yourselves and launch a brand when most people, even middle class, had no idea what online shopping even was?
So I think what we wanted to do is do enough advertising to make sure that we were going to be amongst the survivors, but do as little as we could to save as much money as possible, because we knew that we were just throwing money out the window, because it was like saying, advertising something that then when people go to a supermarket, it's not there, it's not displayed there. So internet penetration was 3%, and TV, you target 100% of the population. So right away you're wasting 97% of the money. So we did very little TV, but we did enough so that, because interestingly enough, the venture capitalists and all the financial community were the ones that were asking and pushing for people to spend money. So we were like, okay, we have to do something, because otherwise they won't invest in our round of financing because they think we won't survive. But we know that this is not the way to go. So, yeah. No, I would definitely save that money. It was a waste of money. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we have time for one more question if there is. Otherwise, thank you.